Welcome to the Live Big, Eat Big show. We're on episode number 13. Today we're going to be covering how to prepare for your first competition. And that can be strength loss competition, whatever competition that is. We've got Mona with a bunch of tips for you. She's competed all her life, essentially, internationally. No Colm today. Colm was busy this week, so we are filling in just us two. Now, obviously, down in the description, if you're listening to this, the recording, there will be a link to the Lift Big, Eat Big Underground. It has all Mona's training programs on Olympic weightlifting, all Colm's training programs on strongman, and all our strength and size training programs as well. We have programs constantly being added to, so you're going to have unlimited options for your training depending on your goal. Now, obviously, we have Mona DeLacy here. She's a Commonwealth medalist in Olympic weightlifting. She is a 6-time karate world champion, African champion in weightlifting, CrossFit Games athlete, just all the accolades there. And then I'm a strength and conditioning coach, worked many years within professional and international rugby and many other sports. So I've also helped prepare athletes for competition, competed a bit myself. Mona spent a lot of her career competing herself. So we've got some tips for you to cover how to prepare for competition. So Mona, do you want to start with your first tip?
Yes. So I always say if you want to compete in your first competition, it doesn't matter, like you mentioned, could be anything or any sport, find a competition, find a date and commit to that date. Get yourself entered, pay your entry fee, because then you know it's set. I think the biggest thing is there's a lot of people out there who says, I want to compete in my first meet. I want to compete, but they never actually commit to a competition. So commit to a competition. It doesn't matter what level you are. You don't need to have been doing the sport for years and years and years. Like, every single person out there or every top level athlete had to start somewhere. So that's point number one, really important. Find a competition, commit to it. Then secondly, if you've got a coach, communicate with your coach. Also, point 1 and 2 kind of goes hand in hand, because what you can do is ask your coach what he thinks regarding a competition, ask maybe what he recommends, and then you guys can, decide together which competition will be best for you. And then also, hopefully that your coach can be at that competition as well. Now, point number 3, that's really important when you are competing at your first competition, you need to remember that you need to know how to do the lifts properly. Now, again, you do not have to be an elite level athlete. So if you're competing in Olympic weightlifting, you need to just know how to snatch and you need to know how to properly clean and jerk. Because if you don't, and you don't know the rules, you could go into the competition and not have the best competition just because you didn't know the rules. So just make sure that, again, you communicate this with your coach, that you just know you go in there knowing how to do the movement properly.
How does someone know if they're ready then to compete? Because is there a threshold that you have where, do they need to lift a certain amount of weight before they jump into competition?
No, if it's going to be a local competition, you can honestly, if you've just, done the sport for a month or 2 months or however long, you can jump into your first competition. But again, you just need to know technically wise how to do the movements. And again, that competition or that very first competition can be like your starting point for, just stepping onto the competition floor, just experiencing the whole vibe of how it feels to compete. I've been at many local competitions before in my life and coached athletes at local competitions as well, where there's athletes out there who really are true beginners. And I admire them. I admire athletes who are true beginners and actually put themselves out there and compete, because they don't have the expectation of generally winning. They don't have the expectation of lifting, breaking records or anything like that. It is literally to compete. And sometimes just having that whole camaraderie, having a whole bunch of athletes from your gym compete, or a whole bunch of teammates, that's the thing that makes it really fun as well.
That's how you catch the bug too, when you go into your first competition and you have a good time. Doesn't matter, there's no expectations. You're just kind of doing it to get some experience. And if you do that, you'll catch the bug for the sport and you'll want to continue competing and continue doing it.
Definitely. And that's actually how I started. I mean, I was told I had to compete, but in the beginning, I wasn't fond of my sport at all. I did my weightlifting and I did it at the time for karate. Um, it was really not something I 100% enjoyed. But after my first competition, like you said, that bug bit me. That's when I actually felt like this is something I could do. I saw other strong females out there doing it. I had these females that I could look up to, and they inspired me, and I wanted to be like them. So sometimes just going to a competition, I like what you mentioned now, and just, you know, being amongst really good athletes or athletes that are better than yourself can really inspire you to even want to be better in the sport.
No, for sure. So you've got that. That was the first three tips for preparing for your first competition. If you're watching this on video, you might see Mia's feet and hands wiggling in the air next to me. So there's something to look out for. But we also have tip number 4. What have you got for us?
So tip number 4, okay, you've got your competition. You and your coach have now kind of worked out when you will be competing. So kind of be like, okay, I've got 8 weeks or 12 weeks so that you can actually now prepare your training towards this competition. Now, going into the competition, it's really important to understand the rules of the sport. Now, what I mean by that is, so for example, in weightlifting, you have to compete in weight categories. So even though it's a local meet, you still need to enter yourself in a weight category. And that doesn't mean that now that you enter yourself into a weight category, you have to cut weight, or you have to change your nutrition drastically or whatever. For your very first meet, your main aim is to step onto that platform, gain the experience, and have fun. But it is a weight category sport, so you just have to enter yourself in that category that you normally weigh in. So that is really important. And then for, like, example, weightlifting, once you've weighed in, your weigh in is 2 hours before your competition time. So if you compete at 10 a.m. in the morning, your weigh in officially will be at 8 a.m. So you want to make sure that before you go into your competition, you know what time it starts. You know the rules of the competition. So like I said, that's, for example, your weigh-in rules in weightlifting. You weigh in, and then your competition will start at, say, 10 a.m. The next thing that you need to know is you need to know that, oh my gosh, I just hit like a mom brain. I just hit
Well,
I
the thing
literally
is as
just hit
well
a blank, but
with
yeah.
the weighing in as well. Like I think I've competed in competitions with only 1 hour weigh-ins between weigh-in and starting. So it's just
Yeah,
important. Yeah, 2 hour weigh-in is the standard for weight competition, but make
yeah,
sure you know beforehand if it's going to be a 1 hour weigh-in or a 2 hour weigh-in. Because if it's a very small competition or very, I guess, a local competition at a club, and maybe they're trying to push a lot of sessions in a day, they'll shorten that window. So just be aware of that too. And regarding the weight class thing too, you enter yourself in a weight class. A lot of people go to their first competition and go, okay, I weigh, I don't even know what the damn new weight class. Let's say 81 kilo class, and you weigh 84
yeah, it keeps
kilos.
changing.
Yeah, and people be like, okay, I'm going to cut down for my first competition to be an 81. But okay, there's some benefits to doing that where, okay, you're going to learn from experience of doing probably a shitty weight cut and then realize that you did it completely wrong and get it better next time. But for your first competition, it's not even worth doing that. You don't want to add extra layers on top of the stress you're already going to have. So just compete in the weight class. Even if you're at the bottom, if you're 82 kilos and there's an 81 weight class, compete in the weight class above the 81s, which would be, I don't even know what that is now. Isn't it in the 90s? They've done a huge jump.
Yeah.
Um, so just compete in that weight class and don't worry about it. Just focus on getting the competition experience, learning the rules, getting comfortable competing, and then maybe next competition, hey, you're going to take it a little more serious now. But you really enjoyed that first one. I really enjoyed it, so I'm going to take it a little more seriously. I'm going to now come down a little bit. I'm going to weight cut for this one, and then start to build from there.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, now you don't want to add that extra stress. So if you can eliminate that extra stress already on the back end, then you can go into the competition a lot more relaxed. And this is what I wanted to say before my mom brain hit in. Another thing that's important is when it comes to competing in your sport, you need to know what you are allowed to wear and what you are not allowed to wear. So, for example, in weightlifting, you have to wear a singlet. They've also now changed the rules a bit with the weigh-in, and I know with what you can weigh in and what you can't weigh in. So just make sure you always know the rules and the regulation. And if you don't, reach out to, a fellow athlete, maybe your federation member, your coach. They should know the rules. And again, if it's something that you've never worn before, like for example, say you're competing in your first competition and you are an athlete who never wears knee guards in training, you don't wear wrist guards, now it's your first ever meet, and you decide, because you've seen an elite level athlete wear knee guards, wrist guards, long sleeve shirts, all of those kind of things. Now you decide you are going to wear that in competition. Now, when you do this, okay, this is something that could potentially throw you off your game. So you need to make sure that the way you train is the way you compete. So if you want to go into your competition and you want to get used to wearing, say, a knee guard or a singlet or whatever, take a few sessions in your training before your competition and actually wear those things. See that they sit comfortably, see that they fit, see that they're not going to hinder your performance, because you want to make sure that you go into your competition super comfortable. And just adding on that, so when it's, for example, your competition day, you want to make sure that at least the night before that you pack all of your things. Like, you don't want to show up at your very first meet forgetting your weightlifting shoes or forgetting your belt, or your knee guards or wrist guards or whatever. So make sure that you have those things packed, even if you have to make a list before. I mean, that's something that I always do. And I mean, after 22 years of competing internationally, I still make lists because I know there's so many things that I need to take with me, including my snacks. And this again is something that I've kind of worked out to the T over the years. I know what snacks, make me feel good. I know which ones, don't make me feel bloated or overly full, especially if I had to do a weight cut. But again, this is because also I've been doing the sport for a really long time. And it takes trial and error, but just make sure that, your stuff is packed the night before, especially if you have to leave early the next morning for your competition.
Before getting back to the podcast, I want to let you know that down in the description is a link to the Lift Big, Eat Big Underground. And within that, you get access to all our training programs, online courses, and into our private Discord community, where all three of us are in there to help you with whatever it is with your training. Regarding the programs, we have Mona, who's done all of the weightlifting cycles. We have Colm, who's done the strongman off-season and strongman competition programs. Then we have all the hallmark Lift Big, Eat Big training programs, Pump Dragon, Flanks Method, and many more. And I've also added muscle building specialization programs within that, and are continuing to update and add training programs into our app. You also get access to Mona's Weightlifting Mastery online course, and you get to join these calls live in the audience where you can ask members only question and answers at the end of each episode. So if that sounds like you, go down in the description. There's a link there to the Lift Big, Eat Big Underground, and that'll give you access to everything I just mentioned. Yeah, that's a good point about don't do anything new. A lot of people fall into that trap. So if you typically don't train with a belt, don't suddenly put a belt on in your competition. Same thing, obviously, with Mono talking knee sleeves. You can do the same thing with your supplements. For example, if you don't take pre-workout or whatever to train normally, don't go to your competition and take pre-workout. I'm telling you now, you will suffer.
Or the athletes that maybe takes pre-workout and then they think on competition day they need to take 2 scoops of pre-workout. We know those athletes, don't do it, because it is going to cause anxiety. It is going to make your heart rate go up. You really already have that extra adrenaline going into your first competition.
Your legs will go jelly. You might snatch well-ish, and then by clean and jerks, your legs, you will not be able to stand up with cleans.
I feel like it's the opposite, because the snatch is so technical that if you feel jelly,
but I'm saying your adrenaline runs out because you have that 10-minute break, and then you dump hard, and then you can't stand up with cleans. You will literally just lose your legs if you suddenly take a whole lot of more pre-workout than usual, or you take pre-workout when you don't take pre-workout. And that's just important to understand going to competition. And if you haven't competed in other sports before, and this may be your first time really competing in something, you don't know how you react to competition. Some people are very calm. Some people are very nervous and anxious. Some people are really hyped up. Some people need hyping up. So you need to go in there and kind of figure that out first before dosing yourself with stimulants. Because if you're one of those people that are already really hyped up and you dose yourself with stimulants on top, you're going to run into those problems that we mentioned.
Yeah, and there's 2 points I want to actually add on this. Um, so before I jump onto the next point, which I want to talk about supplements, which you mentioned, I did want to also mention, like, if you have a certain routine and training, that what you were mentioning now, James, about what you do to help you also psych up, do the same thing in competition. James has a very interesting story of competing in, I think it might have been his first weightlifting competition ever,
No,
where
it wasn't my first. It was one of the nationals. I can't remember.
okay, well, it was nationals, which is even worse. He went into this
Thanks.
competition doing a completely different routine to what he normally does. He went and he psyched himself up hours before the time, listening to hardcore music. And by the time he stepped onto the platform, he had nothing in him.
No, my
So
snatches were
again,
mean. My snatches
okay,
were legit.
okay, and what happened then?
And then I dipped hard for the clean and jerk, and I couldn't stand up with like the easiest cleans.
Why was that?
I didn't bomb though.
You didn't bomb? Are you sure?
No,
I'm pretty sure you told me you bombed,
I've
but
never bombed. I've never
okay.
ever bombed. In fact, I got second in the competition because everyone else bombed, and I ended up
Was
taking
it that
second
same
place.
competition?
No, this was like my second ever competition. Second
Okay,
place.
that's your second ever. You were like,
No,
no, it's nationals. Like
that
you've
was
been
a different one.
competing
I'm
for
saying a
years.
different
Yeah.
competition. Everyone bombed and I got second. But this competition at nationals,
Hmm.
I didn't bomb. I got the first clean and jerk, but then I just couldn't stand up, and it was only like I think it was only like 120, 125 or something. And I
Okay.
mean, I stood up, but then my legs were just done.
But again, I also feel like athletes need to experience this. You can't do everything from the book and, or to the book and just make sure, everything is done 100%. You are going to learn. It is going to be learning experiences. It is going to be trial and error. So you have to go into your first competition as well with an open mind, knowing that, it might take 50 competitions before you've got like, the perfect routine set out. Like an elite level athlete, it takes them years and years and years to figure out the perfect routine that works for them. So again, go in there, have fun, take the experience out of it. And then what I wanted to add when you were talking about the stimulants and the supplements. Now you can't always guarantee that. I don't know if at all local competitions they have doping control testing, but I advise any athlete out there that if you want to compete, make sure that everything that you are taking supplement wise is on the banned substance free list. Because at the end of the day, if you consume something unknowingly, you might be innocent in the whole scenario. But the fact that you took something and it had a banned stimulant in it or a banned substance, um, you are going to be paying the price at the end of the day. No one else, not the companies. Um, so you need to make sure that whatever you put into your body is safe. And I'm not just talking even about supplements, medications. I know there's certain flu medications out there that's got banned substances in them too. There's certain cortisone creams that you can't put on your skin. There's certain asthma medications that you can't use. So you have to make sure that even though this is a local competition, it's your first ever competition, you have to go into this competition knowing that whatever you've got into your body is 100% doping free.
Especially if you have aspirations of competing at a higher level.
Exactly, yeah. Because once you're suspended, something like that stays with an athlete forever. You're marked forever. It's just not nice in an athlete's career. You could be suspended for, at least 4 years, depending on whatever you took. But it's not worth it at the end of the day. If you're uncertain, just don't take it. That's my best advice.
No, that's a good one to add regarding banned substances and things like that. Yeah, if you want to compete at a high level, just make sure that's all clean as such. I mean, most supplements anyway are kind of dubious at best in terms of efficacy. There's some good ones. I mean, a lot of them just kind of they don't cause any harm, but you may have some upside. But I mean, if you're sticking to your protein powders and then getting banned substance tested supplements, you're okay. I mean, you'll see the badge on the packaging if it's banned substance tested too.
Yeah, I know there's quite a few supplement companies out there that really do pay a lot of money to get their supplements third party tested. So those are the ones that you can trust. Okay, so another point that is really important when you're going to your first meet, I always say, even though weightlifting is an individual sport, it's still a team scenario. So at the end of the day, you'll need a coach, you'll need someone with you. It could be a mentor, it could be a friend, it could be a family member, whoever who might understand the sport. So maybe even a training partner. But having someone with you on competition day is just, I mean, yes, you can compete by yourself. But when you're there and if you've got someone with you, it again takes away so much stress because you have to write down your attempts and say your warm-up platform is really far from the table where you have to write your attempts on. um, Someone that potentially can help you load or just help you carry a water bottle to, just before you step onto the main platform, or someone that could just potentially like help psych you up or keep you calm. Having this person with you, and obviously it would be most beneficial if it's your coach, because your coach will always supposed to know all of the rules. So that obviously helps. But if you do have someone with you that maybe hasn't been in the sport for a long time, or maybe they've, quite new to the sport, make sure that you both educate yourself on the rules, so that when this person goes and help you, that it actually helps and not causes more stress. But yeah, I always say, have someone with you that will just, help so much, because when you're going to the competition, you want to actually get there, do your weigh in, get onto the platform, do your warm up, walk onto the main platform, and do your lift. You don't want to have to worry about any other thing out there. And then again, if you've got someone that's helping you, and maybe it's not the person that, it's not your coach or a training partner or someone, it might be someone else's coach helping you. What would help is if you've got your weights, your starting weights, your warm up weights, all of those weights written down, because then also that can help the coach with counting and letting you know how many attempts it is going to be until you are on the platform, so that you don't go to the back where it's the warm up area and you end up, you know, warming up to your starting weight and it's still 30 minutes before you step onto the platform. So just having someone there with a bit of experience really does help.
Yep, that's all good advice there. What have you got for the next tip? I've got a crazy Mia screaming down here.
Yeah,
Oh, she's actually.
I even hear her from the other room. Maybe Mia can actually give us a tip. No, but in all honesty, like, again, going into your first competition, if you just go in there and the basic rules, and if you don't, ask someone, go out there, um, go out there for the experience, go out there to have fun. Don't put that extreme pressure on yourself from, the get go. You have plenty of years ahead of you, or competitions ahead of you, to take it even more seriously. But it's just going to help to, put yourself out there. So I actually had a presentation yesterday when I spoke about imposter syndrome. So if you have that self-doubt and you are scared to step on that platform, or you're scared maybe someone's going to judge you, I promise you, when you step onto that platform, it's only you and the bar that should matter. No one out there is going to shout comments or boo you or whatever. I've never been to a weightlifting competition where people do that. Even if you have a really bad competition, no, everyone is actually supportive at the end of the day. And weightlifting, again, is such an amazing sport where it is such a great team team scenario, team setting, where people actually cheer you on, people from other clubs, other athletes, you're at the back and you'll actually see the camaraderie with all the athletes out there. And that to me is what makes weightlifting so amazing. And that's why I always say to athletes, just go and do your first competition, experience it, because sometimes, like what you were saying, once you've experienced it once that bug has bitten you, I can almost guarantee you that it's gonna stick with you. And I've had so many athletes who has come over from other sports, CrossFit, even myself with martial arts. And once that bug bites you, I mean, weightlifting is a different challenge in itself. I mean, like I said, it might be just you on the bar, but like having that team behind you and having your teammates cheer you on. And even again, if you don't have a good day, those athletes are still there supporting you. And just know that, you aren't always going to have amazing competitions. It isn't always going to go great. But again, with weightlifting, you've got, I think I forgot to mention this as well, you've got 3 snatches and 3 clean and jerks. So you want to make sure, also when you go out there, like, what your first attempts are going to be. I think I'm kind of like jumping back now, but I feel like if you go into your competition, it's not about what we kind of spoke about earlier. It's not about, winning or breaking records or anything like that. But I always say, try to make your first competition aim to get 6 out of 6. And if it's your first ever lifts and you're confused, like what weight you want to start, make sure that your first attempt is always something that you can comfortably snatch, even for 2 or 3 repetitions, because you want to make that first attempt really easy. Because once you've got a snatch on the board, you are in the competition. And even better, once you have, you've done your snatches and you have a clean and jerk on the board, then you've got a total. And at the end of the day, making a total is really important for weightlifting.
How long should someone put aside or expect the competition to last?
You mean hours wise?
Yep.
So if you think about it, like just from weigh-in till when it's competition time, it could possibly be 2 hours. Like you said, there are some local competitions where they only give you 1 hour, but I would always say, kind of just bargain on 2, but know what they are going to be doing at your competition. And then the competition itself, depending on how many people are in categories. I mean, I've seen some local competitions where they put, close to 20 people in like one category just to have everyone lift. So it could range anything from, 3 hours to even up to, 4 hours. It very rarely will be more than like 4 to 5 hours. That is if you include, your weigh-in time as well.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Anywhere an extra basically 2 or 3 hours for the actual competition and then 2 hours for weigh-in.
Yeah. So if you have other plans that day, I would say don't have them. Yeah, you can, after your competition, you can make plans or whatever. But yeah, you never know, and you don't want to put that extra stress on you in any ways. And it is one of those where sometimes competitions run late, sometimes they start late. If it's a local competition, it might not be exactly the times that they say. So I would rather just be I would be there earlier, knowing that I'm prepared and I know what time I'm weighing in. I know what I need to wear to weigh in. And I know what my first attempts are, because that's something they're going to ask you as well when you do your weigh in. They're going to ask you, what are your starting lifts? And it doesn't necessarily have to mean the exact starting weights that you are going to be lifting, but it's normally a general idea of what you want to start.
Perfect. What else have you got on the list, Leaf?
I think
really.
It? Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
That's kind of it. Yeah.
Yeah, we covered all your tips for preparing for your first competition. I mean, a lot of these tips can be used regardless of the sport. So if you're going to go compete in your first powerlifting meet, a lot of these are the same. Strongman, very similar as well. And then, I mean, if you're not competing in a strength sport and you're competing in other sports, that is also something you can use for those other sports as well. But I guess most importantly, just go and have fun in your first competition and worry about all the other stuff later if you decide to continue competing. Because one, you don't know if you're going to enjoy it. You don't know if that's something you want to do down the line. So kind of get a feel for it.
And if you're scared, just commit to one. Tell your coach, tell your people around you, because then you are roped into this. Because I know competing in your first anything is always scary. But just remember that every single athlete out there had to start somewhere. And I bet you, even if you compete in a local competition, there is going to be a bunch of other athletes that are also competing their very first time. So you are never alone in this journey.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. I think that covers everything we're going to do on this podcast. Mia just fell asleep on me. I was going to actually move the camera, but I can't. I can't lean forward. I'm pretty much stuck here. But we'll finish the podcast there. A nice short one today covering everything on how to prepare for your first competition. Down in the description, Make sure you check out the Lift Big Eat Big Underground. There's actually free programs down there too if you go down and check that out. And also make sure to like, subscribe, share it around if you enjoy this. We will be continuing this weekly with all sorts of different topics. If there's a topic that you want to hear, make sure you let us know, because we will cover anything that you want covered on here. I mean, we've actually been asked to cover SARMs and steroids, but we don't know shit about that. So unfortunately, we cannot cover those topics. We'd have to get someone on to cover that.
Yeah. We know, like, for example, being in a sport that is tested, we know what not to take. So we've got a book. So if you're a competitive or a professional athlete, you've got the World Anti-Doping Association website or book that you can download. And, if ever, even when I go to the doctor or whatever, if they prescribe something, I always make sure that it's clean. So that we know. But we can't give you information on why people take what they take when they get banned or to enhance performance.
Unfortunately. But we will catch you next week, and we'll be covering deadlifting next week. How to get a huge deadlift, tips and technical tips and tricks, and then also accessory sizes, programming, just the whole shebang on building a huge deadlift. So we will see you next week.